Welcome to the Novaworks Learning Center. In this video, we will demonstrate how to add Level 1 tagging to the notes to financial statements. To start, let's briefly recap the different levels of tagging that are required by the SEC in the notes to financial statements. First is Level 1, which is also commonly called block tagging. This level involves identifying the text for each note in the Notes to Financial Statements section and applying a single XBRL text block element to it. For Level 1 tagging, you want to locate the beginning of the note and apply a Level 1 engram to it. Then you locate the end of the note and apply an ending engram to it. Next is Level 2. This is very similar to Level 1 in that you will be identifying the text and applying XBRL text block elements. However, for this level, you will be tagging each significant accounting policy in the text to the notes to financials. Usually, the significant accounting policies are all contained in a single note within this section, though you may have to tag significant accounting policies in multiple notes. This depends on the structure of your filing. Level 3 tagging involves marking each table in the notes to financials. Much like we tagged each financial statement as a presentation, Level 3 tagging involves tagging each table in the notes to financials with an XBRL table element. Finally, there is Level 4 tagging or detail tagging. This level of tagging is the most time-consuming. For detail tagging, you must tag each numeric fact within the notes to financials. This includes numbers and information inside tables and within narrative text. Each of these levels will be discussed in detail in their own tutorials. For this tutorial, we'll cover how to perform Level 1 tagging. For many filers, Level 1 tagging will be a two-step process. Most filers will want to specify the label for the elements selected for each note. Our process will be to tag the beginning of each note. Usually this is an HTML block such as a paragraph that contains a heading. By default, the software will select the text of that block for the label for each note. So for example, if we tag Note 1, Basis of Presentation, with the XBRL element, the label will be Note 1, Basis of Presentation. A filer may or may not like that label. Some filers include the numbering in their labels, others prefer not to. Within the software, you can also specify the text to be used as the label. What I'm going to show in this tutorial is how to use the Mark Level 1 tool to mark each disclosure. The Mark Level 1 tool is going to mark the beginning of each note. All of the data between this mark and the next mark will be included in the fact created for the first mark. Unlike the Inline Fact tool, we won't be selecting the data manually. The software will build each fact by adding the data to the fact until it encounters another Level 1 XDX tag, or something called a Level 1 N tag. To illustrate, we will place the Level 1 XDX engram on the first block of the first disclosure. It will add the next block to the fact data, and then the next block, and so on until it gets to the block that has a Level 1 XDX engram for the second disclosure. The fact for disclosure 1 is complete. Then it will begin building the fact for disclosure 2. Because the software builds the facts in this way, you may rarely need to exclude certain kinds of data in the HTML document from the fact. An example of data to exclude would be page headers and footers or non-material structural components like that. It's important to remember that you must tag all of the text for each note to properly disclose it and meet all the filing requirements. The software is going to exclude GoFiler page fields automatically from the fact data. If you don't use the GoFiler page fields, or if your headers and footers are located outside those fields, you'll need to use another tool I will demonstrate in this tutorial, the Exclude Block tool. This function simply marks the block to be excluded from any text block facts that would otherwise contain the data. The Exclude Block function should be used sparingly, or, in most cases, not at all. When inserting Level 1 engrams, it's important to place the tags consistently within the structure of the HTML document. Let's talk about what that means for a moment. When you convert directly from Microsoft Word into GoFiler, the code will have a straightforward, easily taggable structure. If you add additional structure, or are tagging an HTML document sourced from a third-party software, you will have to exercise a higher degree of caution. The underlying HTML code of the document can be viewed as a tree structure. where the HTML tag is the root element. Below that tag, we have children elements, the head tag, which contains information like the title of the document, and the body tag, where we perform the editing and place the content of the document. The body tag will have numerous child elements like paragraphs, divisions, lists, and tables. Some of those children will have their own children, and so on. Level 1 engrams are placed on paragraph, division, or heading tags. These types of tags may be direct children of the body tag, or they may be children of a division tag. The elements contained in the Level 1 tag should all be siblings. They can be all children of the body tag, or they can be children of a single division tag. They should all have the same parent and not have mixed parents. So when you add Level 1 engrams, make sure that you're within sibling elements. If your engrams are not located in sibling elements, then the resulting XBRL facts can have unbalanced HTML tags within them, which is not desirable. That means that the open tag for an HTML block will be located in one XBRL fact, and the closing tag for that same HTML block will be located in a different fact. That can potentially cause coding problems in the final inline XBRL and issues for data consumers, so we don't want that. The management view is going to help with that. You can see the parent elements at the current cursor location in this window. You can see the body tag and the P tag in this example. This example has the body tag, a div tag, and then the P tag. You can use the HTML editing tools to correct any structural issues with divisions to make sure each note is a child of the same parent. You can also use the Mark Level 1 tool to mark the end of each note to prevent issues with unbalanced tags. This adds a little bit of time to the XDX markup, but it allows you to specify where to end a fact. That way you can have separate division tags around each of your notes if you wish. This would look like a div tag, the P tag containing the Level 1 engram, a number of P tags and other HTML elements with the fact data, then the P tag marking the end of the Level 1 disclosure, followed by the closed div tag. In this case, even though the P tag engrams are not siblings, using the close engram marks the close within the same division and thus makes sure that there are no unbalanced tags in the resulting fact data. So we will be using the Mark Level 1 tool to mark the beginning and the end, when needed, of Level 1 text block facts. The Mark Level 1 tool can also be used to mark the labels for a disclosure. This tutorial will also show how to use the Inline Label Tool, which is another method for marking labels for any XBRL element. There are two differences between using the Mark Level 1 tool and the Inline Label Tool. First, the latter is a universal function that we can use to mark the label for any element in the report. Secondly, the Inline Label Tool also allows us to mark any selection of text as a label for a Level 1 fact, regardless of that text position in the document. The Mark Level 1 tool is only going to mark the selection that is inside the Level 1 engram. I'll show the difference between these two functions more closely when I demonstrate how to use them. Now that we've covered the basics of how engrams are going to work, let's go to the software and show how to add them to the document. I have our sample document open. If you follow along with the tutorials, we have already set the taxonomy, tagged the cover page, and tagged the financial statements. My document has 11 notes in it. I'm going to tag each note and then tag each label. To begin, place the cursor in the block that contains the beginning of the first note. This should be the heading for the note. Most headings are going to be in a paragraph block. If we look at the management view, we can see that mine is in a paragraph. You can use the Mark Level 1 tool on paragraph tags, division tags, and heading tags. It's unusual to see division tags without paragraph tags inside them. While you can tag these division tags, usually you'll want to tag the block that is the closest to the beginning of the disclosure. If the HTML content is sourced from another software product, it is not uncommon for div tags to be used for paragraph content. While this is not an appropriate use of the division tags, it's a holdover from the early days of HTML tagging. It still works in the browsers and for Edgar, but it does mean each paragraph will be in a div tag rather than inside of a P tag. Looking in the management view, We can also see that this paragraph is a direct child of the body tag. When we tag other notes, we'll be checking to make sure that they are also direct children of the body tag. If your heading is within a table, say a hanging paragraph reflowed as a table, then you will need to tag the block above or below the heading. Above will include the heading as part of the text of the disclosure. Below will not include the heading as part of the text of the disclosure. If you choose to tag below and omit the heading, then you must remember to exclude the text to omit the headings from each note or mark the end of the previous note before the heading. Unless there's a compelling reason not to, it's usually best to include the heading in the text of each disclosure. To mark this paragraph as the beginning of a note, we will click the Level 1 button. This opens the dialog where we can specify the element for the disclosure. The Type field sets the type of engram. Right now, it is set to Level 1 Disclosure. If you click the drop-down, you'll see other options which are Level 1 Disclosure End and Level 1 Disclosure Label. That will be how you use the tool to insert other kinds of Level 1 engrams. For now, this is the beginning of the first note, so we are going to keep the type set to Level 1 Disclosure. Now set the element for the disclosure. You can type the element name or use the element library. If we open the library, the filter will already be set to only show text block elements. This includes text block, policy text block, and table text block elements, which can be similarly named, so just make sure that you choose the appropriate element. The label usually helps to identify which items are for use with tables and policies. Search for the element. Click OK. And then click OK to add the engram. You can see the engram here is in the P tag now. Scroll down to the next note. Place the cursor on it and check the management view. We are still a direct child of the body tag, so it's fine to continue. Click Level 1. Set the element. Click OK. We can see our first page break here. This is a GoFiler page field, which you can tell by the green background. If you click on it, you can see the field tag in the management view as well. So this will be excluded from the fact data automatically. If I had a footer here that was not included in the field, let me add something very quickly to demonstrate, I can exclude that. I added a few blocks here to the footer to show you how to exclude them. Place the cursor inside the first block. Go to the XDX markup ribbon, click Tools, and choose Exclude Block. It's that easy. The engram has been added. You repeat this for each block to exclude. I added a second line to the footer, so I'll show you the Exclude Block tool again. Place the cursor on the block, click Tools, and choose Exclude Block. Let's continue down to Note 3. Here it is. Place the cursor in the heading. This paragraph is also a direct child of the body tag. Click Level 1. Set the element. And press OK. Continue the process for each note. Here's Note 11, our last note. Click Level 1. Set the element. Press OK. And now we need to set the end tag. Remember that the Level 1 marking builds the fact for each disclosure until it encounters a new starting engram or an ending engram. If we don't put an ending engram at the end of the last note, the software will continue building the Note 11 fact using the MD&A, which is not good. Place the cursor on the blank line after the end of the note. If there isn't one, place it at the end of the last paragraph and press Enter to insert one. Ending engrams are not inclusive, so you can't place it on a line that contains any data. Then click Level 1. Set the type to Level 1 Disclosure End. Click OK. All of the notes are now tagged. The next thing I want to do is make the labels for each note. If I allow the software to use the default labels, which is the data in the block that I tagged for each note, then the labels would have the numbering on them, which I don't want for this filing. I'm going to show using the Level 1 tool to mark the first label. We'll start by selecting the text that we'll use for the label. I'm going to select everything after the number. Make sure not to include the closed bold tag in the selection if you have any bold headings with inline tags. Click Level 1. The software has detected that we have text selected, so it will automatically set the type to Level 1 Disclosure Label. Click OK to set the label. This sets the label for the Level 1 engram that contains this XDX engram. Since my heading is included in the fact data for this Level 1 engram, using this function works and is quite fast since it only takes a few clicks. Let's use this process to mark the next label. Select the text. Click Level 1. Click OK. Very easy. For the next label, I'll show the Inline Label Tool. This function is a little more complex, but it offers some greater flexibility because it allows you to specify the element that is going to be using the label. One large consideration for the Inline Label Tool is that the label must appear in the text of the disclosure before any other detailed information, such as Level 2, Level 3, or Level 4 facts. This is because the tool applies the label to the current level of tagging. Our labels are in the first block of the Level 1 fact, so using the Inline Label Tool is fine. Select the text. As with the Level 1 tool, we want to make sure that we avoid any closing tags. This time, click on Inline Label. I have two options on this dialog. I can specify the element using the element library, or I can specify the label belongs to the previous element or the next element in the document. There are pros and cons for each technique. Specifying an element is not ambiguous. It means that the text is going to be used for that element. However, that also means that, if I want to change the element later, I need to update the label engram as well. Using the next or previous option is a little more ambiguous, but it's flexible. It means that the text is going to be used for the next element, or the previous element, as specified by the XDX engram around this label engram. If the element changes, the label will always apply to it. As long as I don't add an element engram between this label engram and the Level 1 engram it applies to, this option works well. I'm going to set the For Element field to XDX Previous Element. There is no chance that an engram would be inserted between this label and the previous element, so it is a safe option and lets me change the elements later without needing to update the labels. Click OK to set the label. You can see that the engram is in the management view now. Move on to the next note. Select the text to use for the label. Click Inline Label. Set the For Element field to XDX Previous Element. Click OK. You can set the label for the remaining notes using either tool. I would recommend that you stick to a uniform method of tagging the labels for Level 1 engrams when you work with your own documents. just so it's consistent throughout the document. There are reasons to use one method over another, which primarily come down to whether the label is included inside the text of the disclosure or not. I'm going to use the Mark Level 1 tool for the rest of this document because it is slightly faster and makes it easier to identify which labels in the text belong to the Level 1 engrams. That may be a consideration. In the management view, labels inserted using the Level 1 tool are clearly identified as Level 1 labels, whereas labels inserted using the Inline Label Tool say Inline Label. I'm going to tag the last of these labels. And our Level 1 tagging is done. And that concludes this tutorial on Level 1 tagging for the notes to financial statements. Thanks for watching.